Robert Reich is the Secretary of Labor and a friend of President Clinton since they sailed off to Oxford on Rhodes scholarships. Reich is seen as a liberal among Clinton advisors, but his message from the beginning has been the following. The wages of American workers are declining, and that as we pass from an industrial age into an informational age, it is essential for the government to promote retraining and development of skills for workers. Joining me now from Washington, the Secretary of Labor and former professor at the Kennedy School of Government, Robert Reich. Secretary Reich, it's good to have you on the broadcast.
How are you this evening, Charlie?
Did I fairly sum up what you are about and where you stand?
Well, you summed it up much faster and better than I can. I'm so, I run out on the mouth. I get so excited about these issues, you can't stop me. But basically, that's it. You're talking about a completely different workplace, a completely different economy requiring new skills. A lot of Americans caught on the old side of the divide. They don't have the skills, they don't have the education, they don't have the connections they need to get to the new economy.
Before I get to those issues, let me just start with what's happening in Washington. As you know, the Federal Reserve is meeting there discussing the possibility of a cut in interest rates in order to prevent the economy from sliding into a recession. Your thoughts on that meeting and what might come out of it?
Well, Charlie, I have made something of a career of not speaking and commenting about what the Federal Reserve Board is going to do. But let me just say this. We do not yet have the June employment figures. But we do know, on the basis of the May figures, that the biggest job losses were in those sectors of the economy, such as construction and consumer durables, like automobiles, that are most sensitive to interest rates. Now, let me only say that. I will say no more. I will predict nothing. I will make no further comment. But it should be interesting. We will watch carefully what they do.
There are some who are saying that they may not make a decision about lowering interest rates until they get a chance to see the June data on employment from your department. When will they see it?
Well, the June data will be available on Friday. And that is the official day in which the numbers come out for the employment effects of a particular month before. Now, remember, for May and for April, we saw declines in employment. In fact, the May numbers were quite disappointing, about 100,000 jobs lost to the American economy. In April, we had about a 7,000 job loss. The consensus among economists, people looking at this, is that it's not really on the road to recession. It does signal, at least there's some evidence that there is a kind of a downshifting going on. The economy may be slowing down. But on the other hand, Charlie, there are all kinds of indicators over the last few weeks. Housing starts increasing, claims for unemployment insurance down and then up and then down again. It's very difficult to tell precisely what's going on. And
tell me what your best guess is about the numbers on employment for June.
Well, again, I have to be very, very careful in not making any guesses about June numbers because people assume that I know something that I do not know. I have not seen the numbers, so I'm going to refrain from the temptation to make any guesses at all. But let me just simply say that on the basis of April and May, there is some evidence to conclude that the economy is downshifting, but it is still very much moving forward. And again, having not seen the June numbers,
what does downshifting but moving forward mean?
Well, that it means it's slowing down. Like any car would, you might downshift, but it's not going in reverse.
Why then did Greenspan say he's concerned we may be sliding into a recession, and therefore everybody having to do with economic observation is saying this could be a crucial meeting because it may mean a lowering of interest rates?
Well, many people are watching this meeting very carefully, obviously, and but with regard to what Chairman Greenspan has said, I don't know. He's a little bit cryptic in his statements about what he believes the economy is doing or is not about to do. Again, the consensus of forecasters, and I'm just simply reporting the consensus, seems to be that the economy, although it may be slowing down, is not going into a recession. But again, having not seen the June figures, I'm going to be very, very careful with you and not make any predictions at all.
Yeah. Do you support the President's budget proposals for reducing the deficit to zero over a 10-year span?
Oh, of course. Charlie, the important point here is the priorities. Obviously, the budget has got to be brought down, the budget deficit, but the question is, how are you going to do it? And I think in this big discussion that we are having, this national discussion over deficit reduction, what is not paid enough attention to right now is how you get to zero. What the president is proposing, for example, is to, instead of reducing education and training by $43 billion, which is what the Republicans want to do, he says, let's increase education job training by $40 billion. Yes, I do want to slow down the growth of Medicare, but nowhere near as much as the Republicans want to do. I don't want to reduce the benefits for people who are on Medicare. I also want to take about $25 billion in savings from what might be called corporate welfare. These are unnecessary kind of subsidies and tax benefits that go to corporations. And I want to do it over 10 years rather than 7 years because, says the president, I feel that that is more responsible. I can do it in a way that doesn't hurt people over 10 years. The goal is the same, but the means are very, very different.
Why, I want to talk about a speech you made in Las Vegas in a moment, but why are American workers' earnings declining? And why have you made it a signal and seminal position of your stewardship of the Department of Labor, the retraining of American workers and the means for them to gain skills to compete in a very different marketplace?
They're declining, and then we have information, Charlie, disturbing information from the first quarter of 1994 to the first quarter of 1995. The recent survey, most recent survey from the Bureau of Labor Statistics suggests that actually the wages have declined by about 2.3%. Now, what's particularly disturbing about that is that productivity over the same year, that is, how big the economic pie is, has actually increased. The economic pie has grown by over 2%. Now, how do you figure that out? Why are wages going down when the economic pie is actually growing? It's not surprising that corporate profits are going up, that the stock market is doing very well, because wages, the money is not going into wages. I believe that one of the major reasons why wages are declining, and it's not just the past year. We've seen a very, very sluggish wage growth, a decline in median wages. Half the workforce has actually suffered declines in wages over many, many years because of technological changes, because of international trade, because of the decline in the bargaining power of unions, and also because of the decline in the real value, adjusted for inflation, of the minimum wage, which is now heading toward a 40-year low. You put all that together, and American wage earners, if they're in the middle or if they're at the bottom, are all seeing a gradual erosion of wages.
Is government...
Particularly if they don't have the skills, Charlie, and that comes back to what you were saying.
It does, and I guess the argument between you and Speaker Gingrich would come, who will be on this broadcast tomorrow night, will come down to what's the best way to generate jobs and income for American workers. You seem to believe the best way is for government to promote programs that will engage in retraining and the gaining of skills for workers who might be displaced or certainly will face a loss in earning power.
Charlie, what the president has proposed is a tax benefit for working families, up to $10,000 a year, to get education, college education for kids, job training, also to consolidate all of these job training programs that are now in the federal government, and instead of having government programs, job training programs, provide purchasing power to people in the form of skill grants on vouchers. They can go to community college, they can get the skills they need, they can have we're creating right now a computerized, digitized information system so people can find out, even in shopping centers, there'll be actual screens, they can find out what jobs are in demand, what skills are in demand that underlie those jobs.
So when it comes down to a great conflict about what is the proper role of government, you want to be first in line to say government has a role in helping people gain access to a college education and to the power to get better jobs.
The power to get better jobs, empowering people to get better jobs. Obviously, individuals have a lot of responsibility as well, and families. And the private sector, Charlie, has a great deal of responsibility in terms of training their workers. What I hope you ask Speaker Gingrich tomorrow, he's a great follower of the Tofflers, who talk about the third wave of after industrialization. The first wave was agricultural, and the second wave of economic change was the industrial age, and the third wave is the information age. But what I hope you ask him is, how to help Americans who are stranded on the second wave so that they don't drown on their way to the third wave. If you're taking away all the lifeboats, if you're cutting education, if you're cutting job training, if you're making it more difficult for people to get student loans and work study for their kids, if you're making it more difficult for young people to get school-to-work apprenticeships, and harder for everybody to get training when a corporation downsizes, what are you giving people in terms of the tools that they need to get to the third wave, to get to the new jobs that are out there? I mean, I agree with the speaker that there are new jobs out there that require skills. Right. But if you don't give people the wherewithal to help themselves, people begin to drown. And not to take the metaphor too far, but let me just say that over the last 15 years, what we have seen in this country is the rising tide not lifting all boats. It's been lifting the yachts and the luxury cruisers. They've been doing very well. But the rowboats in the middle have been taking on water, and the poor rafts and dinghies at the other end have been actually sinking. Not everybody has been improved in terms of their economic benefits going around.
It seems that the rallying cry of Democrats, certainly coming out of the Congress, is that why cut the taxes of the rich, and why cut programs for the middle class and the poor in order to provide a tax cut for the rich? Isn't that engaging in a kind of class warfare and a political rhetoric that we ought to go beyond?
I don't believe it is. I think the problem is not that the rich are getting richer. I think that we ought to celebrate the fact that some Americans are getting very rich. The real problem is that unlike the 3 decades after the Second World War, when the rising tide really did lift all boats, when everybody did double their incomes more or less, even the bottom fifth and the top fifth and the middle fifth, and everybody went up. Unlike that, we are living in an era, and we have for the last 15 years, in which the top are doing very well, but not everybody else is doing well. And the problem is not that the rich are getting rich. The problem is that most Americans are going nowhere, and many Americans are suffering something that in this country we have not seen since the 1930s, and that is downward mobility.
Well, you make an interesting point in which you point out that in America there are the underclass and the overclass and the very anxious middle class.
It's becoming an anxious class in the middle.
But isn't that the group that supported Republicans overwhelmingly in the election of 1994, leading Speaker Gingrich to characterize what he was doing as revolutionary?
I think there are many people, when they face downward mobility, who are willing to go for anybody that says, I will change your lives, I will cut your taxes. Never, never, never underestimate the political potency of a declining paycheck, Charlie.
But that's exactly what President Clinton did in 1992. He talked about a tax cut, and he talked about, I will change things and I'll make your life better.
And we have laid the foundation for that. If you look at all of the, not only the education and training and the minimum wage proposals and the earned income tax credit, which is a tax break for anybody earning under $27,000, but many, many other initiatives that he has taken, everything from the Family and Medical Leave Act all the way through some tax benefits that he has, but not tax benefits for people earning up to $200,000. You see, what the president is saying, yes, middle class and lower middle class Americans deserve some help. Not only a tax break for education and job training, but a tax break, $500 a child. But I am not going to award tax breaks to people who are very wealthy. I'm not going to go for a capital gains tax break. And we know that most of the benefits from a capital gains tax break go to the people who are very much at the top of the wave. They've done extremely well. It is very debatable that a capital gains tax break translates into more investment.
All right, let me turn to the speech that you made. Before I turn to the speech, I think it was San Diego rather than Las Vegas, although probably with all the conventions out there, you made a speech in Las Vegas within the last year. But the speech in San Diego, as I remember, you talked about the political issue of 1996, unlike It's the Economy Stupid, which was the issue in 1992, will be family values. What's significant about that, and how will it be defined, and how will it cause both sides to divide? What are the different perspectives on family values that make it a political issue?
Some people, when they talk about family values, and I'm talking about now some of the new Republicans and leadership, and maybe you can take this up tomorrow night with Mr. Gingrich, they talk as if they are still providing the props and the supports that families need, the child care that people need, and the job training, and the daycare, and all of the ways in which families can get ahead. But actually, they're taking away those props. They're taking away the earned income tax credit, much of the earned income tax credit. They're making it more difficult for families to get a college education. They're making it harder for families to get daycare. To me, they do not stand for family values. The real meaning of family values is giving families an opportunity to get ahead, to stay together through hard work, to maintain their living standards, if not improve living standards. One thing that worries me is that in the present era we are in, when so many people are feeling the anxiety and disillusionment that comes from declining paychecks, we find that there is fertile ground for demagogues who want to point the finger of blame not at a changing economic structure, but they want to point a finger of blame at immigrants or at welfare mothers or at the programs such as affirmative action, which have helped many, many people get ahead in this country. Or they want to blame government bureaucrats. Now, each of these issues has to be examined, Charlie, and we are examining. We are examining welfare. We have welfare reform proposals. We're examining immigration. We're looking at affirmative action, making sure that it achieves its goals. And we're reinventing government. But none of these issues is responsible for the pressures that middle-class people and working-class people are feeling right now. Those issues, as I said before, those pressures come from rapidly changing economy, technology, international trade, the declining power of unions, and also the decline of the minimum wage for some people. It is not enough. In fact, it seems to me it is very dangerous to create scapegoats, because once you go down that road, giving people scapegoats, there's almost no end to it.
Secretary Reich, it's always good to have you on the broadcast. I thank you for joining us this evening and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Charlie. Good night.
Robert Reich, Secretary of Labor. We'll be back. Joel Schumacher is here. He is the director of Batman Forever. Stay with us.